In the early 1800s, I understand that the government were not very keen on people emigrating en masse, and they particularly objected to skilled artisans leaving. And so Thomas Helliwell surreptitiously left the country, and he sailed from Sunderland to Canada. Normally, the place of the port of emigration was Liverpool.
Toronto, the town of York at that time, was expanding. News had got back that if you worked hard, you could establish yourselves quite well. People were sending for relatives. In general, it was an area where people who felt maybe they weren't doing quite as well in the old country and wanted to start anew felt that they would have a chance. There was land grants were also being given at that point. They were encouraging people to come over. You could get quite a lot of land, and in fact that's what Thomas Helliwell and his son-in-law did. They came over on a land grant. There were good prospects for farming in the area. The land was quite good. There was a lot of encouragement for people to start businesses, to develop farms.
Eventually, after about a good 3 months, they finally did meet up with their husband and the son-in-law. And it must have been quite a harrowing experience, but they all seemed to take it in the stride. Now then, having got there, and they'd been camping at night on the shore, on the riverside, they quite often could hear wolves and bears and heaven knows what, all sorts of wild animals which came down. They lit fires in order to keep these creatures away. But they also had the Indians to contend with. And even after they'd settled in the Don River Valley, up to about 1831-32, apparently the Indians were quite used to coming down and being very near the pioneer settlers. Because, of course, the pioneers had taken the Indians' territory. Quite a number of families from this area emigrated at different times, sometimes in the 1820s, as the Helliwells did, more often in the 1840s, 1860s. And we have examples of letters that were written by other families that emigrated to Canada, quite interesting letters in that the person that's over in Canada writes home and asks a brother or perhaps a father to send him seeds to plant. And they quite often were very, very concerned to keep in touch, but really they were people that were pioneer in spirit. It was amazing the fortitude that they showed.
I became acquainted with one of my great-uncle's diaries, Uncle William, who was sent to England in 1832 to study the brewing business in London, and also to make a visit home to Todmorden in Yorkshire. His diaries were fascinating and introduced me to a tremendous number of relatives that I never knew existed. And at the same time, I was sent a newspaper clipping about Elizabeth, and when I went there, she and her husband were more than kind.
Helen came over about 1983, and we had been corresponding for quite some time, and she was interested to hear that and to see the places in the area that her relations had originally emigrated from. She came over with a friend, and we had a very enjoyable time. We were on the floor of the lounge with family trees spread out and lists of Lords and Eastwoods and Helliwells, all names connected with her family. And she was very pleased indeed with the work that had been done. And then in the afternoon, my husband and I took her and her friend.